The music has got me in the mood. Welcome to DeFi Expectations, the show where we cover projects in the decentralized finance and crypto space that defy our expectations of what this space is supposed to be about. And our first episode today, you might call it our pilot to determine whether or not we're worth staying on the air or not, is to cover Lumexo, which is a stellar decentralized exchange and wallet. But we like to think that what we're going to do next with the realm of DeFi integrations and providing an all in one solution to facilitate access to the wide world of Stellar, I think that's what makes us pretty exciting. And to send that message home, I decided to bring on, with along the rest of the Lumexo team, a community member named Moses. He is our community moderator who has gathered some questions from the community to present a kind of AMA format for us to talk about Lumexo and what this project means to people in the space. One of the things we like to say is that we talk about pretty extensively in the crypto and decentralized finance world is bridging assets, right? How to bridge assets to other networks, trading swaps, etc. But we don't really talk as much as we should about bridging people. And I think that that's foundational to what we're looking to achieve with Lumexo and what I think the Stellar community as a whole is seeking to embrace. So thank you, Moses, for coming on the show today. How are you doing today, Moses? And already we've lost our guest, and that's just how it goes sometimes. But that's okay. We'll give him a minute to get back in. And if he's able to get back in, we'll go for it. If not, I have the questions and I'll just talk to myself like a crazy person. We'll just keep it going. We're not even worried about it. I guess to give you a bit of an intro about what to me matters about this project, Lumexo, what makes it so special, particularly to me, is that I actually come from the Ethereum community, and I used to call myself a maximalist. And it's funny how much a person can change because about 10 years ago, I was also liberal, and now I'm libertarian, so now classic liberal, right? But I remember one of the first things that appealed to me about Ethereum and actually turned me off from Bitcoin was this idea of proof of stake and it being somehow more energy efficient, right? And I didn't even want to explore Bitcoin. I just kind of looked at it like this immovable rock. I wasn't really sold on the digital gold idea. And I realized very quickly, once you have education about what this Bitcoin asset actually is, that it actually solves energy problems all around the globe, that they're starting to do things with Bitcoin that's actually really fantastic. Like one of the things that excites me about it is how they're actually using it to solve energy in places like Africa. Imagine you have a waterfall in some location where there is no local community, okay? There wouldn't typically be a reason to build the infrastructure to try to harness that hydro energy to provide for a local community. And even if you could, you'd have to transport the output some way. How the hell do you do that? Well, with Bitcoin, you can. You could actually set up a mining rig there and you could actually harness this energy to essentially produce Bitcoin. And then you could actually export that Bitcoin to a location and create a community there. And it could basically grow iteratively based on infrastructure once you're getting the community started and people once the community is in place, which is pretty fantastic to me because if you had told me back in the days when I was a Bernie Sanders socialist that we could solve these types of economic inequality problems with free market principles, my God, it would have blown my freaking head off. So realizing that your mind can change by learning, by being educated, not just learning about economics, but learning about the economics of Bitcoin. It can really transform your ability to understand what this whole blockchain world represents. And that first step towards realizing that this is a multi chain world, that Bitcoin is the core of what all these assets represent, but we can't make it without other assets, is what made me kind of step away from being an Ethereum maximalist and try to look for roots in something different. And around this time that I was making this transformation, I actually was introduced to some very interesting people from a project called Lumexo. Now, Lumexo is focused on the Stellar network, right? And I had heard some things about Stellar and the ease of transacting with Stellar, but in the same way that I was kind of turned off initially from Bitcoin because of my beliefs about Ethereum and how it enabled smart contracts and was more green because of proof of stake. I was wondering, is there any kind of solution here that's still decentralized? Or does it provide for lower gas fees or building something meaningful, right? I wasn't really sold on it yet, but I had started to work with these people from this project, initially with us to do incorporation in Georgia. And because if you know a little bit about Georgia, you know that it's actually a great country, sorry, for starting a crypto entity because of the free market principles by which they live by and how they have very much embraced crypto. You can actually come here and trade crypto, and actually it's treated like instead of a security, it's treated like a currency, which means you don't have to pay tax on your crypto gains. It's pretty remarkable. But they started to talk to me about their project and how they needed some additional support, and we decided to work a little bit more long term. And I've been representing them as a COO and marketing director. But really, I like to think that all of us contribute equally to this kind of vision of a platform that doesn't just bridge assets, but bridges people. And that's what I really love about Lumexo, because it started with me really embracing the team and just the work that we did initially getting the entity set up. And then it became more about me embracing what Lumexo was in the context of Stellar and what Stellar might be in the context of decentralized finance. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, is how I went from becoming an Ethereum maximalist to coming to support this project, Lumexo, on Stellar, and no longer being a person who is tribal, who is stuck in the mindset that things only have to be one way, that no other chain is decentralized enough to provide these kind of solutions that we're all seeking in the crypto and decentralized finance space. And anybody who might be coming to this space, whether it's from Bitcoin, whether it might be from Ethereum communities, maybe you're somebody who is tribal like me as well. Maybe you had that promise of decentralized finance 3,000 years ago, back in 2020 when we had DeFi summer and we were paying like $50 gas fees to transact on Ethereum. And that was on the low end, right? Some of the gas fees we were paying for a 5% yield APY farm, we were paying like $150 to transact in and out of it. I tried to tell my friend about this. He said, "Why would I want to get involved in this? I can't." I said, "You just gotta trust me, man. It's gonna be great. Like this future of decentralized finance is gonna be beautiful. There's all these tokens flowing like water." And it's true. There was a time that the tokens and all that were essential to the gains you would make because the yield was not. But with Stellar, you can actually experience this DeFi future and pay less than a penny for gas. Are you joking me? I never really believed that something like this was possible. And when you come to Lumexo, initially you might be turned on by the sleek UI. You might appreciate a smooth UX and just think to yourself, wow, this is pretty great. Like, I like transacting on this. I can do a swap for less than a penny. I can buy Bitcoin with $1 and it actually makes sense. I mean, imagine that, right? That's initially what's exciting about what this product has initially released. Okay. But what comes next in my mind, is what I think is a lot more exciting. And that's the all-in-one solution that we hope to provide in the realm of decentralized finance. So it's not just about what we've built so far, but where we go from here. What are we going to build on top of this initial platform that we've created, on top of the DEX, the centralized exchange, and the wallet? Okay, what can we do in the realm of DeFi integrations? Can we enable certain lending and borrowing strategies for people who may be concerned about having to transact just on Stellar, right? Is there an ability for us to, in the future, enable cross-chain swaps? There's all kinds of things we're looking at right now, and we're not committed to any one thing, and I don't want to promise the world to you. I just want to tell you that this is an exciting project, and I just am hoping we can talk a little bit today, based on some of these questions we have from the community, and just go for it. And it seems like Moses is back, which is
Yeah,
perfect timing, because I think you got some questions for me, Moses, huh?
yeah, I got some questions. Sorry about that. It was due to my internet. So
No
basically,
problem.
yeah, okay, thank you. So Fry, I started off by asking what makes Lumexo wallet different from other Stellar wallet and Dexes. So if you could answer that for me.
Absolutely. So honestly, like if you compare it to Stellar wallets and dexes that are doing things correctly, some things will be similar, right? Because if someone is not operating in a decentralized manner, they'll be kind of like a middleman to the transactions that you want on the network. So there'll be a custodial element to your wallet, or when you're making a swap, someone else will be actually, you'll be giving them permission to interact with your assets. So first of all, it's important to note that we operate in a decentralized, non-custodial manner. So if the trust is basically inherent to the Stellar network, okay, that's why it's less relevant, things like audits, than it would be to someone like Ethereum. When you have like Uniswap, for example, which is a smart contract built atop of Ethereum. That's the DEX, that people are pretty familiar with Ethereum. You kind of come to expect that all these checks are necessary to make sure your smart contract is working. But the DEX and the wallet are inherent to Stellar. So because we facilitate those transactions, we could be similar to a lot of platforms that are doing it correctly the same way. Okay. But what's going to make us
Okay.
different out the gate is things like our UI and UX, right? How easy is it to
Yeah.
interact on the platform? How clean is it to transact? These kind of things, right? Like that's initially like something that matters, of course. But the most important thing beyond that is the ethos, right? So not
Yeah.
just like what are our principles about tokens now, but where are we going from here? So, for example, when it comes to listing, we are not pay to play. If you want to get listed with Lumexo, okay, it's
Mhm.
really as simple as filling out a simple application and you're listed. We're still working on that application. I believe that we just recently made some headway on that. But essentially, if you want to get listed a certain way, we can assist you with that. And there's no fee to do so. So there's no gatekeeping. There's no, we support this token over that token, so we're going to label you a scam or something like that, or delist you. We don't do this. It's buyer beware. We're not going to come on board and start gatekeeping people from swapping the assets they want to swap. But the thing that we'll talk about a little bit further, I'm sure in some of your other questions, Moses, is kind of like where we go from here, and that's
Yeah,
and
sure, sure.
actually creating this kind of all-in-one DeFi solution. And that's where like Lumex is going to really shine.
I think that's perfect. So basically the team just released a blog that contains the ecosystem and where Lumexo goes from here. That brings me to my second question. And with the development of these new tools, how is Lumexo making it easier for the users to actually interact with these tools?
Yeah, I mean, a big part of that is the accessibility, right? I mean, this was a big issue that was brought up in at Stellar Meridian, where I attended on behalf of Lumexo. Brazil and other parts of Latin America, they have their own issues with adoption, which relates to things like the ease of going from like a fiat currency to a stable coin or a real world asset, or then transacting from that onto a decentralized exchange. And a big part of what we're looking to contribute there is education about how to on ramp and things that we implement to our platform in the near future to make on ramping easier, so that you're able to just immediately transact and get your assets onto our platform with very little friction. To that point, and with the discussion about what I said is what makes us unique as Lumexo, is this concept we have of a all-in-one DeFi solution. So in the future,
Okay.
that could be enabling lending and borrowing. It could be enabling
Mm-hmm.
cross-chain swaps. It could be a bunch of different things. But the idea is, rather than having to go all across Stellar, across different platforms that you have to trust with this one and that one, it's about how much can we accomplish on one platform. And this is what I love about Lumexo, is we're literally aiming for the moon, and we want to accomplish as much as we literally can with just this one platform and this one vision that is Lumexo.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. I perfectly understood what you're trying to say. So basically, to ask further, still on the topic of, is Lumexo bigger plan, Lumexo future plan for the product? I want you to actually shed more light on Lumexo long term vision. Are we building a product or an ecosystem?
Sure. So, I mean, the long term vision for Lumexo is an ecosystem. You know what I mean? It's how we connect all these different moving parts of Stellar and make it accessible to a user who maybe hasn't transacted on blockchain before. And that was like what was unique to me about Stellar Meridian. I kind of expected, oh, this is going to all be devs or crypto enthusiasts, people who've been around this block before, but it was actually surprising to me that a great majority of the people who were present at Stellar Meridian, many of them hadn't interacted with crypto before. There was a woman I met whose company was actually focused on making crypto and decentralized finance products like Lumexo, actually more accessible to women, for example, or even just other users who maybe have been kind of excluded from the traditional kind of crypto bro culture that's kind of been created by all across chains. You know what I mean? It's not really a problem that just exists on any one chain. And you see this even with marketing, when you're trying to decide like how to target your demographics for different types of ad campaigns. And sometimes it's like,
Yeah.
am I going after this type of market because I think that's what's going to embrace crypto, right? Or am I continuing to create that reality because that's all that I think will embrace crypto? But we shouldn't just be talking to men about crypto. We shouldn't just be talking to crypto enthusiasts about crypto. We shouldn't just be talking to finance experts. We shouldn't just be talking to women based on our own, honestly, but like kind of misguidings about what they want out of crypto or what it means, because we all want the same thing. We want a financial future that's meaningful to us. And it feels like silly to even have to say that, but it's true. And the fact that she was there to try to like make this space more inclusive and accessible, to me, demonstrated this problem exists. And for me to not talk about it, like whether or not I can always find the best words to say it, I think would be a greater disservice, um, than acknowledging that it exists. And she was one of the first people to actually test Lumexo when we were still in the beta phase, and give us some feedback about how we could make it more accessible. Things like being aware when you set up a wallet that you need 5 XLM, or how to on ramp that XLM, right? And this was an interesting part of that, right? She's onboarding some currency from Coinbase, right? And of course, Coinbase takes a fee. So you just say 5XLM, but if you have the money for 5XLM and then once Coinbase takes its fee, well, then it kind of becomes cost prohibitive. So really you want to have a bigger bag if you're going to get started. But it's like, how do you
Yeah.
tell people things like this? How do you explain the friction of going from a centralized exchange to a decentralized exchange? How do you explain things like right now with regulation and compliance the way it is? We can't even step into that space as a DeFi product, and try to enable people to on ramp fiat currency without us creating a whole list of problems for ourselves as a decentralized exchange. It's a lot to educate people about. And, we didn't think it was a big deal when you go to a website and you enter your credit card, right? We think that's intuitive, but you did have to go to a bank, right? You did have to apply for an account. You did have to put money into the bank. If you're using a credit card, you had to work on your credit. And we think of all this as intuitive now, but it's a big process that you have to explain to people. It's the same with crypto. But and it's
Yeah.
and it's intuitive once you've been there, and it's actually not that difficult, but we have to make it digestible. And I think that's a big part of what the vision is for Lumexo. It's not just enabling all these DeFi integrations, but making them make sense to users who maybe haven't interacted in this space before.
Perfect. So basically, Lumexo is for everyone. Crypto is for everyone, and Lumexo makes sure that crypto is for everyone. So perfect, perfect, perfect. Yeah. So basically, we are talking about the present currently, but I want us to dive a bit into the future. I want you to talk about where do you see the next 6 to 12 months from now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'd like to see something in the realm of some additional partnerships to start capitalizing on our DeFi integrations, because right now, I don't want to promise too much before, we've
Yeah,
actually
yeah,
started
yeah.
to deliver on some of those things. Some of those conversations have been fully had, but I'd like to say in the next 6 to 12 months that we can onboard 1 to 2 partners, that we can enable some additional integrations for the site to actually achieve on our vision of an all-in-one DeFi platform. We've
Okay.
talked about things like our token launch, and for me, launching a token is about making it meaningful, right? Like, we don't want a pump and dump asset that's going to be the bane of our existence, right? We don't want people to think that we're just a speculative BS project. We don't want to just create a token to pump our own bags, so to speak. We want to create something that's meaningful and community driven. So I'd like to
Okay.
say that beyond partnerships, I'd really love to see our community grow and us to move forward with this vision of launching a token that is governed in large part by the community.
Hmm. So basically, thank you for that answer. I've seen like a couple of times in the community whereby somebody just say CA, you understand, asking for the CA of probably Lumexo. So I want to ask, um, what when is Lumexo launching their token, and what should be expected by the community?
Sure, I appreciate you asking. Right now, we're pretty much focused on community growth and actual users of the product, Lumexo's
Mm-hmm.
primary wallet and DEX. But we're as we're working on this roadmap iteratively based on this community growth. As we get more requests for information on the token, it's probably going to move it up the line in terms of our um, our incentive to actually to distribute it and work on it in a more aggressive kind of manner. But the most important thing to us is community growth. So when we launch the token, it has the appropriate audience to actually embrace it. Additionally, it's about making sure that the incentives are correct, right? Because, you know, we could just launch a token tomorrow and we could distribute it however people would speculate on it for a minute, dump it, and it'd be over, right? We have to
Yeah,
really
yeah.
have a roadmap for distribution that
Mm-hmm.
gives people incentive to hold it long term, and for us to start showing that we're actually committing and releasing these partnerships and connections to the DeFi world that we've promised. So to that end, The token drop itself is going to be very much driven by influence from, in my view, Badger DAO. Um,
Okay.
as someone who's going to be working on tokenomics, or you could just say distribution of this token initially, I really would look to Badger DAO as an example of how to do that. They were able to grow a community over 2 billion TVL, a massive
Wow.
community that they actually ended up launching. You know, their community wasn't 2 billion TVL overnight, but they had a community overnight. And
Mm.
the reason they were able to do this is how they distributed their token. It was
Yeah.
based on interactions in the world of DeFi. They were all about bringing Bitcoin to DeFi or Ethereum users, right? So if you had swapped wrapped Bitcoin, if you had worked with certain yield strategies that were somehow involved with holding Bitcoin and then borrowing something else to swap or participate in a yield farm, just different strategies. I know
Yeah.
Curve was a platform, CurveFi. You know, I don't know if you remember
Yes.
that platform,
Mm.
using Curve for some of these strategies was an example, right? So they airdropped people this token, and rather than people just dumping the token, they actually held it. And overnight, we had a team of marketing professionals, like people who are operations experts, people from the realm of traditional finance and crypto, all around, you know? So to me, like, there's somebody that I think is a great model for how to follow with token distribution. And
Mm-hmm.
also just how fun their badger is and how they called their token vault sets, right? There's a lot of very interesting things to learn about marketing and how they made their product just interesting and cute and fun, you know?
Okay.
So that's going to very much be kind of the basis, I would say, for the distribution of the token, but the community and where it goes from there will be more in charge of that future with things like voting, in governance, with
Mm.
tokens and different things such as that. So it's kind of like where we go from there, that the community will get to make that choice.
Okay. So basically, while you were talking, you gave us an insight of drafting out the tokenomics and all, although you did not give us like details about you drafting it and all. So basically, this is leading me to like my next question. Are we going to, is Lumexo going to be replicating how Badger distributed their airdrops? Or how will Lumexo distribute their airdrops?
I mean, we'll be emulating some things based on user behavior, but we'll also be kind of building it ourselves based on our own incentive structure and what's relevant to Stellar. You know, it could be things like, have they swapped on another platform or provided liquidity, or our own platform?
Mm.
And you know, when you think about incentives, you have to kind of look at different elements, right? I mean, and it's hard because, you know, all of our users are valuable, right? But you have to think,
Yeah.
like, who do we think is going to hold a token long term?
Mm.
Obviously, we want to incentivize traders who swap frequently, right? But does it make sense to provide a greater airdrop or distribution to people who provide liquidity, right? If
Mm.
someone actually provides liquidity, aren't they kind of more invested long term in the growth of Stellar and this network that we're a part of? So that's something to really consider, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of like what I would say is that's kind of how initially we're kind of looking at doing the distribution. But
Mm.
once we have the distribution, and maybe there's token initiatives that people want to vote on with improvement proposals, right? This is where the community kind of takes charge of, okay, I have this token, where do we go from here? Do
Mm.
we do we leverage some of the token assets to fund marketing? Do we as a community use the tokens? Are the tokens going to be given as a award or reward for swaps or providing liquidity? You know, all these different things we can
Yeah,
provide
yeah.
kind of an idea of where we can head, but the community is going to help us solidify that vision. They have to be
Mm.
involved in the project and involved in the token, or they have no incentive to hold because they're not a part of it, you know? So
So thank you very much. At least this is like giving us a hint on how to actually position for Lumexo future drops. And also, I want to ask, will the token actually power anything on Lumexo? Will the token be used particularly for like utility of Lumexo?
At this particular time, we're not really looking to token gate anything. So, what I mean by that is the whole purpose of what Lumexo is about free markets. It starts with things like the fact that we're not charging people to be listed. We're
Mm,
not going to unlist somebody because we want to just arbitrarily call them a scam, not give them some kind of way to communicate with us that they're not, or provide evidence that they're not and they're legitimate. We delist them and make them go through all these hoops because really we have our own interests, right? And we don't want to support them. That's
yeah.
not what we're about. We are about a free, open ecosystem where you can come to Lumexo and you can swap Bitcoin for as little as $1. I mean, we don't want any aspect of Lumexo to be uninclusive, to be inaccessible to a
Yeah.
user
Mm,
just strictly based on their income level. And I think requiring someone to hold a token, especially if the token really does pump in value and they have to hold a certain number of tokens just to get access to a swap, I don't think that's at all in line with what we're trying to do. What we might do, okay, to incentivize users to hold the token, maybe you have to hold 500 of the Lumexo token to get access to a token gated area of the Discord. This isn't
mm,
solidified yet. It's an idea, right?
yeah, yeah,
This
yeah.
might be, this could be something we could do because yeah, you get more access to information if you have the token, and
Mm,
or maybe um, certain discussions around, it could be a whale room or something where people speculate on the price of the token or certain
yeah.
assets that are tradable on Stellar. These
Mm,
things are all possible, but it's all like speculative at this point. I'm just kind of giving you an idea of where our vision aligns and where it does not. And at this time, the idea of gating actual access to our app is not really something that we're approaching.
perfect, perfect. You once more tell us that Lumexo is basically for everyone, and everyone has access to Lumexo. Um, so basically, I've seen a lot of questions in the community whereby people are asking, is Lumexo going to support multiple chains later in the future? So I need you to actually like shed more light to that. Is Lumexo actually planning on um, supporting different chains currently, or is it in their future plans, or is it their current plans?
Sure. So, I mean, inherently, the wallet and the DEX are inherent to Stellar. They're not EVM compatible. So it's not like the wallet is ever intended to hold multiple assets or anything like that. But what we are interested in is making this project accessible to users who might be on other chains, which could start with enabling things like cross-chain swaps. This is something we're exploring. We don't have anything perfectly solidified yet, but it is something that we are looking at because in my view, if we want to operate in a space where we believe in free markets, where we support people to trade assets and swap the way that they want to, I think we have to also acknowledge that we live in a multi-chain world. So being able to facilitate access to other assets on other chains, it is something we are looking at currently.
Perfect, perfect. Because personally, I'm a multi-chain maxi, and also I'm asking the question on behalf of like the rest of the community members that are all multi-chain maxi and would like to get involved with Lumexo and Stella in general. So basically, this brings me to my next question. Privacy is a very very core concept in cryptocurrency and blockchain in general. So how is Lumexo planning on approaching privacy?
Sure. So we actually did a blog about this recently, and it's actually based on something that Stellar's been talking about with regards to CTT, which is basically confidential transactions. And I'll actually quote the blog here. But Stellar has begun
Mm,
outlining a strategy to bring real world privacy to a payments first blockchain without abandoning transparency or compliance. The foundation's latest messaging frames Stellar as a proving ground for configurable privacy tools, including work on confidential tokens and private payments that are opt in and compliance ready. You can actually see this blog and many others on
Yeah.
blog.lumexo.io. And it's pretty great because we also talk about things like ERC 3643, which is the Ethereum standard that's come to Stellar
Mm.
to enable
Yes,
facilitating
yes.
transactions and swaps of real world assets. Um, and it's
Mm.
also just kind of a way to show that we are looking to platforms like Ethereum, not because we want to be Ethereum. We do things our own way here at Stellar, but of
Yes.
course, the
Mhm.
standards that they are creating for compliance ready real world assets and other types of uh, procedures, policies, however you want to think about it, that are relevant to Stellar community, we are looking to that because it does make sense. So that's something that I definitely think is worth looking into as our blog to learn a little bit more about that. But yes, there are many ways in the future that Lumexo will be prepared for these kind of changes that'll make private transactions possible.
Wow, thank you very much. So basically, you just talked about reward asset, and I want us to actually visit the topic reward asset in relating to the questions that the community members asked. Um, you mentioned earlier that you just recently came back from Berlin, basically. So I know your trip. You saw some things. You learned a lot about everything. Basically, you are fry basically. So I would like to ask, what did you learn on that trip? And how does the trip relate to Lumexo mission?
Absolutely. I honestly love to tie things, even if they're unrelated, back to the overall mission and soul journey that I'm on, that I think we're all on as part of this incredible, fantastic world and life that we get to live. And I think how we deal with money and the thoughts that we have about government are very integral to that. And
Yeah.
we talk about, I mentioned this at the beginning of the show, bridging assets, but do we talk enough about bridging people? Because being able to bridge people is what enables you to grow a community, which in turn is what gives you a platform that's going to last for the ages. It's what
Yeah.
turns a simple DEX that could come and go overnight into something that becomes synonymous with trading on that platform. And what I loved about Berlin is just seeing that there are a lot of things that are different, right? I mean, the language could be different. There's people who speak English, but their native language is obviously different. You've got people who speak German, but you've also got people who are there and who are Turkish. You've got all kinds of individuals who come together to create this beautiful. I visited Berlin in Germany, and it's just a beautiful city. It's so representative of a credible country that preserves its heritage. And sometimes when we talk about those things, they're looked at in a very negative light. But to be able to ride a subway or a bus, for example, and not see graffiti or tagging all over it, to see that they actually take
Mm.
care of their public spaces, to see
Yeah.
that these historical buildings have been protected from the ravages of time, to see that there are these incredible statues that are so magnificent. I walked into this cathedral. It's called Berlin Cathedral. I was overwhelmed. Okay, I'm somebody who sometimes, I can be emotional, I can be connected, but I can also be very disconnected. And I'd be like, well, I've seen this 100 times before. But to walk
Yeah.
into a cathedral like this and to literally not be able to look at a single square inch that wasn't meticulously crafted with care and love and just pride for making something beautiful and protecting it over time, right? It made me reflect a lot on what are we building and contributing in our own lives that will stand the test of time, because a hurricane could come and wipe out a building, you know asteroids could come down from the sky, or culture could change. Someone could raid a cathedral and decide that it's
Yeah.
a different religion now. You know what I mean? But what I love about blockchain is we have these very structured rules, but we also allow the community to kind of contribute and grow upon what that chain becomes and what it means to the community who supports it, right? And these different community contributors may have their own different beliefs about government, and they may have their own different languages they speak. They may think about money differently,
Yeah.
or all kinds of things differently, you know. But
Mm.
what are we doing to ensure that we connect with people across different languages, belief structures, cultures, to contribute positively to a space that is meaningful? And
Mm.
that to me is kind of like my takeaway, that that is the most important mission. It's not about pumping your bags. It's not about just trying to be some kind of celebrity or just make some kind of name for yourself. You know what I mean? It's about contributing something meaningful in the space that people are going to be proud of, that it's going to last the test of time. And there's nothing more private to a person than where they keep their money and where they trust their assets. And there's so much that Stellar's doing to not just expand beyond, I guess, digital money or cryptocurrency, whatever people want to think about, but real world assets as well. And that's what I really loved about that trip, is the reminder that we're building something bigger that's meant to house not just, you know, structure, like a physical structure. This is like a digital structure that's supported by all of us in a decentralized manner. And we have to be very conscious of the future that we're creating.
That's very, very emotional, and I could actually relate to what you're saying in regards to Lumexo. Lumexo is trying to build something that supports everybody from all walks of life, something beautiful, and it's already proven in their UI. You understand? So, thank you for that. We recently saw the integration of ERC 3643 on Stellar. So, I would like to ask, what does reward asset like gold mean for the future of Stellar?
To me, I what I love about real world assets is the ease of facilitating like transfers of these kinds of assets in a meaningful way. So, for example, you know, I was at Stellar Meridian, and it was Defiant News founder Camilla Rousseau. She was giving a talk, actually talking about, you know, tokenization. We've tokenized everything. Now what, right? And they were talking specifically about things like real world assets. And one of the things they brought up was the idea of being able to tokenize a mortgage, for example, the equity that you have in your home, and being able to borrow against it in a meaningful way, almost like a home equity line of credit. And I thought this
Mm,
was particularly interesting to me
mm,
because honestly, like when I was getting ready to move to Georgia, and I was literally feeling in a corner in terms of what my options were, and is there any possibility I should just stay in America? One of the last things I thought of is, if I didn't want to get rid of my home, maybe I could take a loan against it to survive for
mm,
a while, maybe just try to make it in America a little bit longer. Well, in
mm.
spite of my great credit, I could not get a single dollar from a home
Wow.
equity line. And they tried to explain the complex math that makes sense only to them about how you can have 100K in equity in your home and you can't
Mm,
borrow a dollar against it.
yeah.
I could not
Wow.
believe it, right? But this would be a way to facilitate in a decentralized manner this kind of access to liquidity
Mm,
for people who have something like a home, but they can't connect with anybody who will let them borrow it against it. You know, I'm sure somebody in a DeFi community would have contributed to that initiative, would have trusted me, at least on the blockchain, to do something like that. Because if I failed, they'd liquidate my house, right? I mean,
yeah.
you would think, right? But this was an option that wasn't accessible to me.
Mm,
Um, and you know, with the possibility of putting mortgages, you know, a actual home with equity on chain, with the ability to put gold or silver or oil or whatever, even speculation futures on the prices of these assets, to put all this on chain. And Stellar is creating a roadmap with people like Ethereum, you know, and this real world assets standard ERC 3643. I mean, that to me is such a great indicator of the kind of value that can come to this platform. I mean, people joke and speculate about what are you going to do when XLM hits $100, and who knows if that'll happen or not. But like, my God, is it not possible to see some serious gains to the XLM token if we can start tokenizing real world assets? My
Yeah,
God,
yeah.
I mean, the potential there, and the idea of people putting something like gold or real world asset like an equity into a smart contract and borrowing XLM or USDC from it, geez, I mean, that's bullish, man. I don't know what else to say.
So, thank you. Basically, you spoke about like if someone can actually predict the price of XLM to like $100, who knows what will happen. Just let me chip in this. Currently, there's a post on Lumexo page stated community members can actually predict the price of XLM towards the end of this month, and they could actually get like $50 for it. So if you are listening to this, you could just go there and just, you understand, predict your price, and you stand a chance to win $50. So basically, let's proceed. What is the biggest thing you think people misunderstand about Stellar?
You know, honestly, like when I first heard about Stellar, I just had a much smaller vision
Hmm.
for what they were trying to achieve. I mean, I I just was so dismissive of so many chains that were smaller, that didn't have the same size or adoption as, Bitcoin or Ethereum. I just kind of put them in the background, kind of thinking, well, what's this to focus on? And then I start hearing about Stellar, and I hear that they work a lot with stable coins, or, they're able to facilitate bank transactions. And I hate banks. So, like, the way I initially heard and what I thought about it was very
Yeah,
reductive to what it
yeah.
actually was. And I discovered this especially when I realized that this Sorabon, um, this little thing called Sorabon that exists on XLM Stellar enables all these DeFi integrations, right? So this isn't like a chain to just swap stable coins or to facilitate stable coin swaps to eventually go to banks because of some kind of like compliance thing or something like that. This is actual like DeFi. And it's DeFi with gas fees under $1. You know what I mean? Like that to me was like the major turning point in what the way I felt before about being an Ethereum like maximalist, and the
Yeah.
way I felt after about actually like embracing Stellar and what the
Mm,
future could be for this platform. And then once you look at things like real world assets and all that that means, the vision of what it can be even greater. I mean, my parents, they tried to buy physical gold because, in my view, trying to get them to buy like Bitcoin or Ethereum or even Stellar was completely impossible. Like there was no way I was going to explain to them how to do this and that it would make any sense to them. They thought that I was getting this for them as a kind of like emergency fund in the event that my move to Georgia failed on me and they would have to fly my ass back, like God help you, Fry, you blew it again. But no, like it actually was in my way. I was like trying to give them an emergency fund because I'm not so sure about some things with the dollar there. But like I tried to get them just to buy gold. I gave them some money. I said, go buy some gold and I guess some silver if you can't find enough gold, right? It was a nightmare for them to find any reputable place without a ridiculous markup that would sell them the gold. They finally found a place that I think was under the 5% markup. They were able to get an ounce of gold and some silver, and they've
mm.
experienced some incredible gains for it. And again, this is their emergency fund. They keep saying it's my money, but it's not. I'm like, you guys are going to
Oh,
use
yeah,
this. Things never go
yeah.
south. But the issue they were told directly from the guy that they bought the gold from, the dealer. He said, just don't think because it goes up 10%, you can come back and I'm just going to liquidate it for you and give you cash. You know what I
Mm,
mean?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm not a bank. You know what I mean? So like,
yeah.
don't get mad if you come back and I don't need the inventory. I don't have all this money on hand to just constantly be swapping people in
Mm,
and out of their gold. But if you
yeah.
had bought a real world asset like gold and
Mm,
silver on the blockchain, and you trust it and you know how to do it and it's easy, right?
mm,
God, your asset goes up 10%, you can sell it like gold.
yeah,
Gold has been on the
yeah.
rise, right? We're currently right now, I'll just look at it. We're currently right now at $4,113. Okay. It reached like
Mm,
$4,300 at one point. Well,
yeah, yeah.
anybody could have predicted this thing spiked quite a lot. Maybe it's gonna drop a bit, right? Well,
Mm,
if you had that kind of ability to actually facilitate a swap of an asset on the blockchain, well, you could have swapped, bought the dip back at 4,000, and you just made $300 in extra gold value. You know what I mean? So. Um,
yeah, yeah.
this is just an example, and you always think I like to say this, but like when you're a trader you always lose. And what I mean by that is you always think about how much better of a swap you could have made. Oh, if I would have sold the top here and bought the dip there,
Oh,
it doesn't
yeah,
matter if
that's
you
correct.
yeah, you look at the chart over time and you forget how much you've gained because you think about every peak in value you could have exploited, right? But like again, how do
Yeah.
you do this with physical gold? This isn't the Western days where you go run to the bank and you trade your gold and then come back. It's insane to think that you could do
Mm,
something like this. But this is again a benefit of Lumexo, right? Is a benefit of
yes.
Stellar because we are integrating these real world assets and we're making it possible to swap things like gold on chain and do it
Mm,
for gas fees less than a penny. When back in the day, if you tried to swap during the peak of Ethereum, you'd lose all your gains just on the gas fees. So,
that's true. That's correct. That's correct, basically. So instead of like running back to the vendor to actually like sell their good, they could, if they bought it on chain, they could actually like sell it off very very fast, considering the speed of Stellar and the very very low cost fee. That's correct,
yes.
basically. Um, so basically, let's visit back your trip to Berlin and let's visit some memories a bit. So, if Lumexo was a cathedral, what kind of cathedral will Lumexo be from your own point of view?
I like that one. So, You know, I think of a cathedral full of people of all kinds of belief systems, all kinds of faiths, and
Mm,
maybe there is some kind of structure that's governed by certain rules that we all agree to, but it's ever expanding, not in a way where like one side of the cathedral walls gets ripped down and like, oh God, what are they doing to the cathedral? But it's
mm,
constantly expanding and becoming more and more beautiful. Just the same way I was able to look at every square inch of that cathedral and feel overwhelmed by the beauty that was put into every moment. That's what
mm,
every square inch, every moment shared by people who attended, right? That's what I think of as a blockchain ledger, right? These are
mm,
people swapping back and forth for different reasons, some making huge gains, some making huge losses, but they're having trust in a platform to facilitate that. And that's what I kind of would think of as what I think of Stellar being and Lumexo its position in it, especially
mm,
with the DeFi integrations, right? Because we have rules upon which we follow, being a blockchain based application that's built on Stellar, being
mm,
Lumexo. But with the DeFi integrations, we get to enable people to have the kind of experience they want. You could literally say, I just want to swap in and out of XLM and stable coins.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
XLM just had some major growth. I think it's going to top off here. I'm going to swap to a stable coin. Okay, it dipped. I want to buy back. And we can do simple things like
mm,
that, right?
mm,
You could also say, I want to actually, in the future with certain integrations, you could say, I want to stake a large quantity of XLM
mm,
and I want to borrow a stable coin so that I can swap in and out of Bitcoin or do other things. Like we talked about as well, it could be a future where you actually have a tokenized asset like a mortgage or equity in your house and you're able to borrow against it and do different types of things as well, or swapping cross chain if we enable something like that in the future with
mm,
different market makers. There's to me, it is a cathedral that is continually growing and not just developed with us as being the architects, us
mm,
as in Lumexo, but the community. who is Lumexo as well, with things like G Lumexo. You know what I mean? That I see
Yeah,
you posting
yeah,
all the time,
yeah,
Moses. It's the idea that we are one community, that we are building this together,
mm,
and it's really incredible because we can actually build a cathedral together, much like this one on
yeah,
blockchain.
yeah,
If we all
yes.
tried to be builders in the real physical space, I think our cathedral might look like shit, and some of us aren't very suited to building, but no, there's all kinds of room for all kinds of builders in blockchain. This is true for Stellar. This is true for Lumexo. We're looking to grow our community and build this big, beautiful cathedral together.
Yeah. So Fry, I want us to actually talk about like the future of like DeFi, the future of blockchain, the future of cryptocurrency. So I would like to ask from your personal view, what kind of DeFi future are you afraid of?
My God, one ruled by governments and shady compliance. you
Mm,
know, um, I I think what's really interesting is if you I've always been an omnist. I believe in like, and I'll explain why this is relevant in a minute. I believe that there's truth in all kinds of religion. I don't exclude people because of their political background as long as we can respect the fact that we have the right to freedom of speech and peaceful disagreement, you know. I can have
mm,
conversations with people about anything, but something you notice with people who are zealots, people who are like locked into very rigid belief structures, and you don't just see this in religion, but you see it in finance, okay? Especially with
mm,
centralized institutions, okay? I tried to have a debate with my very rigid. I just won't even get to what belief she has because I don't want to imply that everyone who has that belief is the same. It's just the way that she is. But she's just a
mm,
very rigid believer in a very specific set of beliefs, and I try to have discussions with her. And I eventually had to give up because to even have a discussion with her, I have to use the words that she dictates are okay. I have to use the argument structure that is okay based on her beliefs. I
mm,
can't share a meme with her, even if it's supporting her belief system, because the meme is against God. You know what I mean? Even though we're in a new time and we should be able to use different ways of communicating information to people to express a
mm,
point. Okay. Now I'm going to bring this back to traditional finance. They do the same shit to us, these people who are trying to get us to play by their rules. A great example, we were talking about this Binance liquidity layer the other day. And this idea came around of basically creating a liquidity layer of what are called safe tokens or clean tokens. Okay.
mm.
And it made me sick just hearing this because I said, what is a clean token, right? It's
Yeah.
basically whatever is compliant friendly, whatever they can say is, oh, it hasn't been used in a dirty crypto transaction, blah, 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 blah. Maybe
Mm,
it's KYC'd all the way through. It has nothing to do with whether or not you did anything negative with it, but do we know who it came from? Or what about their privacy doesn't matter because the assumption is they're guilty if they want to be private, right? And let's
yeah.
look at it another way. This standard of what a clean token is being created by one of the dirtiest institutions around, the central
Mm,
banking system. Okay, and I'm not just talking about America, I'm talking about globally. All these people who print money out of thin air and then try to tell us that our system is corrupt or unclean. That to me is disgusting because for us to even play ball, we have to use these terms and accept as true things that are bullshit. I'm sorry, but when you print money out of thin air, okay, and you're involved in financial crime every day by literally forcing people to play by rules that are unfair, where every dollar lent to the public is owed
mm,
back at a debt that can never be repaid. When you use people's money, taxpayer money, as your own piggy bank, and you constantly go into debt and still have a AAA rating when you could literally fund an entire military off the
mm,
US debt crisis, are you shitting me that you even have any fucking right to tell us what's a clean token and what's not? The
mm,
future I fear is us caving, bending to the knee to these son of a bitches. And pardon me
Mm.
for being frank about this and speaking this way, but I don't like them. I'm against them. And while I'm all about compliance and being ethical, I am not about bending the knee to people who are not ethical. And I just hope that in this future that is coming, that I fear will be one of surveillance and regulation that is not in our best interest. I
Mm.
only fear that we as a community do not stand up to them.
Wow, that's very very correct actually. Because to add this also, do you ever think we'll get to a point whereby this your thought or this your fear eventually happens? Do you ever think we'll get to that point?
I think we could if we don't stand up. And individuals matter, right? I mean, if
Mm.
you know anything about my ANCAP libertarian beliefs, I mean, I'm supposed to reject collectivism, right? I'm supposed to support the individual, okay? But
Yeah.
it's because I believe in free markets. It's because I believe that we're able to contribute to something better than ourselves, something bigger than ourselves, when we, with our own decision making, with our own freedom and autonomy, we decide to participate in a community, for example. We can become something greater than ourselves, not because we're forced to by government to pay into a tax system that doesn't represent us or
Mm.
to an infrastructure that doesn't support our needs. But when we choose so willingly to do so, we can do something greater than ourselves. So, yes, I do embrace the individual, but I also talk about Fry as a they them, not because I'm some kind of obsessive person about pronouns. It's about the fact that I
Yeah.
don't want be focused on me. I want them to be focused on what we're doing. Who cares what I
Mm.
look like? This is why I was Tom Ripley for the longest time, right? But it, it made sense to me to start putting my face in front of people because I almost died recently, and I wouldn't
Mm.
even come in front of a space to even like show my face because I didn't want to. And now I
Yeah.
want to because I have something to say, and I want people to know that like what we're building is important. Okay, and
Yeah.
we have to be individuals. We have to respect our individuality and our freedom. Okay, that's so
Mm.
important. But it's also very important that we decide with intention the communities we choose to support. That's the most important thing in the world. And
Yeah.
if you have the right to impact your local government around any issue involving crypto or even human rights issues, your own ability to be free. Participate because if you don't, someone else will. Do what you
Mm.
can, make a difference. And if you can't make a difference for your community, make a difference for yourself. That's why I moved. That's why I'm here. I realized being a global citizen, I could do more for the space of decentralized finance than I could being locked somewhere in America, dealing with inflation, dealing with the fact that even if I owned my house outright, maybe my HOA would be too high for me to pay one day, or maybe I'd go to buy milk and it'd be $100. Like it's scary because we think about things like that as ridiculous. But if you told someone 20 years ago that we'd be paying for fast food what we're paying now, that basic essentials like gas would cost as much as they do, I think you'd think that that person was crazy if they went back in time and
Yeah.
told you. But the pot's being
Mm.
turned
Yeah.
up, the heat's being turned up, and we're being cooked alive. And yeah, what basically I fear and how this reality could come about is people just sitting in the pot and thinking that someone's going to come save them. And
Mm.
that isn't a godless belief. I believe God or this higher power is in all of us, and we need to rise up and stand up for the things that we believe in, or we're never going to save ourselves from what's coming.
So basically, you have the opinion that leave decentralization the way it's supposed to be or the way it is designed to be, and when anybody comes to actually tell us how to do our thing, yeah, we should actually stand up to it and be like, no, this is what we want to do. This is how it is meant to be. This is how it is designed to be. Perfect. Thank you
Correct.
for that. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, we need to embrace privacy, and it's just like with things like Tornado Cash. There's going to be bad actors in any space who use something meant for privacy for bad, and they will only point to those bad actors. But
Yeah.
people deserve privacy. I think privacy is an inherent right, and I
Yeah.
loved hearing that CTT is coming to Stellar, because I think the ability to have private transactions even on a blockchain is important, and we cannot let things like those rights get away from us.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Of
Um,
course.
I think
Um,
basically those are
uh-huh.
okay.
I
Those
was
are the
just going to say
questions
at this point,
from you
yeah,
guys.
I've got some questions to ask of you. Just a
Okay.
few. Yeah, I'm going to
Okay.
put you
Let's
on
go.
the spot now, Moses. How does it feel?
All right. All right. I don't know. I'm just trying to like feel comfortable here, but let's go. Let's go.
All right, all right. Let's put you in the hot seat. Okay, so
All right.
Moses, what
Hmm.
surprised you most about building on Stellar versus Ethereum or any other chain that you're commonly familiar with working on?
Okay. So basically, during the podcast, I mentioned that myself, I like to explore different chains and see what they are made of or what they are doing on that chain. And now let's focus more on the question, which is Stellar versus Ethereum. Compared to the way Ethereum is being seen and compared to the way Stellar is being seen, I would say one thing that has played like a major role in the way they are being viewed is popularity. Definitely, Ethereum is regarded as the mother of DeFi. Yes, the birthplace of DeFi. We do not dispute that fact. But there's a lot going on with Stellar that people do not really know about. A lot of infrastructures on Stellar that people do not really know about. From the outer world, Stellar is being viewed as like a payment platform, a global payment platform, and that's just it. It is actually more than that. With the integration of the Soroban codes and the Soroban contract, that you can build DeFi tools and the likes on Stellar. Now, let's talk about what surprised me more about Stellar. Compared to Ethereum, we, it's very, very popular for its high fees, regardless of the fact they say they just made some amendments to how the fees is. I made a couple of transactions on Stellar. The speed at which it was executed was very, very marveling compared to Ethereum. And it did not I did not spend up to a cent for gas fee. So imagine if people actually adopt this. I don't think probably maybe it will be on a very, very competitive level with Ethereum, basically due to the infrastructures that are being placed on Stellar. Stellar can support basically DeFi apps, whatever you want to do on Stellar, and it is very, very cost effective and low in cost and very, 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 very. The speed is marvelous, basically. You understand? So I think people actually need to pivot a bit or reduce their attention a bit or just come check out what Stella is actually doing. And now I'm basically a follower here. Like I'm here basically. I moved from like other channel and now I'm like a follower here basically.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I mean, like for me personally, like being a tribalist on Ethereum and then seeing like the difference to actually like transact on Stellar, it's pretty
Mm,
incredible. I recently
yeah.
made the decision with my developer to migrate our ticketing application Cheers Finance to Stellar, because honestly,
Mm,
like we were thinking to ourselves, if we really want to compete with Ticketmaster and create a good user experience for individuals who are just trying to buy tickets, and sell tickets as an event host, we have to really make the user experience seamless. And frankly, like
mm,
the idea of signing transactions, praying that it works, like maybe a
yeah.
minute or two later that you actually receive your ticket and all that, it just seems to make more sense to actually
Mm,
transact on a platform that's actually geared for smooth swaps and has such low gas fees. It's one thing to tell somebody, well, we don't have any transaction fees like you would with Ticketmaster. We're not going to upsell the ticket 50% or something like that. If you pay
mm,
$50 USDC, which is your stable coin, you're going to pay $50 for the ticket. There's no real inherent difference there. But
yeah.
you do have gas, right, with Ethereum. Well, how much is gas? Well, bro, it depends on the network congestion and all these other
Yeah,
factors.
exactly.
Suddenly you see their brains turn off and they're like, oh, and it doesn't matter if even like with the gas fee, it's less than Ticketmaster, it's still a harder sell because I can't tell you how much gas you're going to need. But once we go on Stellar, I could literally be like, I'll tell you what, man,
Yeah.
you just buy stable coins, USDC, and you buy XLM, $5 in XLM, and you're done. That's it.
That's what, yeah,
Because you're
basically,
going to be
yeah.
able to buy a ticket. It's less than a penny for
Yes, yes.
for a transaction. So you get $5 in XLM, you'll be able to buy tickets for life. I mean, how do you not sell that to somebody? You know what I mean? So I agree with you 100% on the big difference there. So what would you tell Moses? What would you tell a user who's skeptical of Stellar?
Basically, people from all walks of life. Okay, let's say like this. From the outside view, Stellar is being viewed as like only made for payment rails and is only made for stable coins and the likes and for reward assets and everything. But I think Stellar is beyond that. A lot of people do not know that there are meme coins on Stellar. That's to show you how um eco-friendly Stellar is. So regardless of you being a user or a developer, you could actually come on Stellar and build what you want to build. We currently have like the Sorban integration that makes anyone from any developer from any box of life to be able to create DeFi tools, app, whatever you can think of currently. You understand? So it is not only made for payment only. Stellar is now made for everybody.
I agree. I love that. And that's like a big transition for me too, is this idea that that Stellar is only supposed to be for a niche market, but that it's actually for everybody, that all these different integrations are going to make it completely approachable for pretty much anybody from any walk of life. But yeah, and I would say, I mean, my last question I was going to ask for Moses, but I think he's just dropped off, and I'll just kind of answer it ourselves. Is I think that would be the biggest bottleneck that we have as the Stellar community, and of course with Lumexo inheriting this change. It's the idea that we have to change minds about not just what Stellar is in the context of blockchain, but what blockchain is in the realm of traditional finance in our daily lives. A lot of people have some very rigid beliefs about what finance is supposed to be. They might have rigid beliefs about what blockchain is supposed to represent. They might be tribal about their networks. And basically, it's really just about that. It's just about making sure that we can change minds and show people the difference between what we offer and what people might expect us to offer. So, with that, I'm basically ready to wrap. Too late, Moses. You got here too late. I answered your last question for you, and your face is gone, but that's okay. I think we had a good show today. I think we got to cover a lot of awesome subjects. And yeah, I'm really excited that that we were able to do this and have our first episode, our first pilot. I think the network approved us for another show, so that's great. And thank you, Moses, for coming on and doing this show with me. And of course, Bitcoin Live DB, Deorganized Media, and all the partners who've made this possible. And we're just going to keep rocking and rolling.